Stories are the most powerful thing on earth. They are literally life and death. Wars are waged based on the story of who is the hero and who is the villain. You are the result of a story your parents told each other, the one-night stand, the soulmate, and friends who became so much more. Life and death. So wouldn't you like to understand them better, these stories? How Story Works, an elegant guide to the craft of storytelling by Lani Diane Rich, demystifies stories and helps you understand why you love what you love, why you hate what you hate, and why prologues are almost always a bad idea. How Story Works by Lani Diane Rich. Available on Amazon in ebook, audiobook, and paperback form. Get your copy today.
Welcome to Still Pretty, a Buffy the Vampire Slayer podcast from Chipperish Media. I'm story expert and creature of the darkness like Spike, Lani Diane Rich.
And I'm film scholar and neutered vampire who cheats at kitten poker, Noelle LaCroix. And we're here today to talk about Life Serial, the 5th episode of season 6.
Life Serial aired on October 23rd, 2001. It was written by David Fury and, of course, Jane Espenson, whose fingerprints are all over this thing. And it was directed by Nick Mark.
If this is your first episode of Still Pretty, welcome. And this is your spoiler alert. We are a fully spoiled Buffy podcast. We will talk about anything and everything over the entire course of all of the series, maybe, probably, at any time. So consider yourself warned. Fully spoiled podcast. Okay, it's in Latin, so don't laugh. It's supposed to sound like this. Let's go on patrol. In Life Serial, Buffy comes home from a hard night slaying with a bucket of fried chicken, only to find everyone finishing up a home-cooked dinner. As she tries to figure out her life plan, Tara suggests she come back to school and just audit some classes. And Buffy's like, yeah, fine, okay, just let me sit here and eat my symbolic food of depression, the fried chicken leg, in peace. Unfortunately, the trio have not let go of their shared delusion that they are of any real consequence at all in the evil order of things, and are planning to take down Buffy before she ignores them so much she hurts their feelings.
Because this time tomorrow the games begin, and the Slayer will never even know what hit her.
Buffy attends a sociology class with Willow and feels out of sync because she doesn't understand what's going on. Later, as she's waiting to go to a different class with Tara, Warren bumps into her and puts a piece of evil lint on her sweater that somehow makes time rush forward in fits and bursts. The trio watch from their van, patting themselves on their collective backs until Buffy figures it out and finds the lint. Warren hits the self-destruct button and the lint goes poof. And then the three of them assign Warren 220 points for his torment of Buffy.
Beat that! Oh, I will. I will.
Next, Buffy tries to work at Xander's construction site. She manages to get past the standard issue construction site sexism because she can lift a steel beam by herself without so much as a back brace. But then Andrew summons a bunch of demons on the site, and Buffy gets to buffing, and she slays them all. In the excitement, Andrew hits the Star Wars horn, and Buffy notices the black van, but she's distracted by Xander, who wants to know how he's going to explain the damage to the clients. He can't show them the bodies of the demons since they melted away, as did the memories of the guys whose lives she just saved.
It's that time of the month, huh?
Xander believes her, but immediately fires her anyway and sends her away. The next day, Buffy starts her new job, working at the Magic Box with Giles and Anya.
This is gonna be great.
At the Magic Box, Jonathan tries his hand at the competition, cursing Buffy to be stuck in a time loop until she satisfies a customer with a task that resists solving. While stuck in the loop, Giles and Anya and the other customers don't seem to be aware of what's happening, and Buffy is left to Groundhog Day her way through this alone, eventually solving the case of the cranky mummy hand and ending the loop. But she forgets to charge the customer for the shipping costs.
Yeah, I'll just take it out of your pay.
Buffy quits her job, then goes to Spike's crypt to get shit-faced, and tells him her stories of woe while downing shots. He tries to tell her who she is.
You're not a schoolgirl. You're not a shop girl. You're a creature of the darkness, like me.
And she doesn't buy it, but she goes along with him to a demon bar to get information. She thinks they're going to beat up demons for information, but Spike wants to play poker for kittens, which is stupid currency. Buffy dumps the basket of kittens and leaves, and Spike rushes out after her.
What's wrong, love?
What's wrong? You were gonna help me. You were gonna beat heads and fix my life.
Buffy goes outside and stops short when she sees the Nerdmobile and recognizes it from the construction site. She moves toward it and out pops a demon. Well, Jonathan all glamored up to look like a demon, and he takes credit for tormenting her over the last few days. Drunk Buffy kicks him in the gut and falls down, and Jonathan throws a smoke bomb and runs away.
I call on the misty portal to my demon dimension, where I'll lay my head and gently die.
At home the next day, Giles comforts Buffy, both with words and a big check. Which is not a favor. Which is money owed to the girl who never collected a dime but got you 2 years of retroactive pay when WatcherCon came to town, but whatever. Anyway, Buffy is generously grateful at what is apparently being seen as generosity and not, fiduciary justice, but still he manages to look uncomfortable at her response.
I just want to tell you that, this makes me feel safe, knowing you're always going to be here.
Holy shit.
Say it again. Fiduciary justice.
Fiduciary justice. It's so close. Fiduciary.
I love it.
It's almost as much fun to say as corporate malfeasance.
It is. Fiduciary justice.
Yeah.
I like fiduciary justice. All right. So, Noelle. Life Serial. Here we are, mid-season 6, which is known as the, season of Buffy. Although, actually, I really like it a lot, but it is so difficult, and we're going to be wrestling with a lot of that difficulty while we talk about Life Serial. But overall, I'm curious, even though I already know the answer to this, but I'm curious. What did you think? How do you feel about Life Serial? For
the record, how do you feel about this, right?
On the record, this is going down in the books, yes.
So my very first note, when I started writing my notes for this episode, I just wrote, what the actual fuck?
I love it.
There are a lot of things that I like in this episode. There are a lot of great lines in this episode.
Yes.
But oh my God, the metaphorical bullshit of these dudes messing with Buffy. I can't.
Mm-hmm.
I hate it so much. I hate it so.
Okay, ask me how I feel about Life Serial.
Yes, you with microphone. How do you feel, Lani, about Life Serial?
Oh my God, I love it so much.
It's gonna be great. It's gonna be
this
great.
This episode delights me in so many ways, while at the same time I understand completely why you hate it and support your perspective on that, because you're right. I just happen to love it. I just happen to enjoy this episode so much.
The thing is, I want to love it. I want to, because I fucking love a Groundhog Day style time loop so much.
Too.
I love it so much. But I get caught up in this episode in what the actual fuck is happening. Because the guys are watching, they're watching Warren's evil lint do its thing from the van. And they're like, it's doing it. It's wicked cool. But what are they actually watching? And similarly with the time loop in the magic shop, they're watching from the van, but what the fuck are they actually seeing? It just, I don't know. I love this idea of messing with the time and Buffy's sense of reality, because of course, metaphorically, that's what she's going through. And I'm here for the demon as, a metaphor for Buffy's experience. But this is not our usual demon as metaphor. It's literally 3 dudes in a van with technology.
It's literally 3 misogynists in a van, which is like 5 cats in a trench coat, I guess.
I guess.
But 3 misogynists in a van that are, so it's actually not metaphor. I mean, that's one of the things about season 6 is that we're leaving our metaphorical demon state, right? And we're moving into this is actual reality. We are recognizing the actual nastiness that exists within humans. And I think that may be part of the reason. There are a lot of reasons that I can understand why people who hate season 6 hate season 6. I actually really like it. And the more I watch it, the more I like it. I hated it like everybody else in the beginning, but the more I engage with it, the more I actually enjoy the things that are happening within season 6 and the questions that they raise. At the same time, as a woman suffering from like real experiential and generational trauma at the hands of men, like this, men like this, it's really difficult to watch. It's difficult to interact with. Here we are having an entire episode that is nothing but these weaselly little nothings, right? These weak, dumb, white men that somehow manage to fail upward, ruining things for everybody else. And watching that happen in 2020, you know what? It's a bit much. It's a bit much. I'm not going to lie. So I get it. Like when a lot of this stuff can be really, really hard to watch. At the same time, like I love the whole, like everything is funny. Jane Espenson can delight me pretty much all the time. And there is so much Espensonian, like wonderful, let me throw down to the misty portals where I will lay down and gently die,
Yup.
There's just so much. The repetitive, this is going to be great. Like that is so fun. The neutered vampire who cheats at kitten poker. Like there's so much really fun stuff going on here. And we see, these almost like short stories as Buffy moves through her day, right? That we're in these like individual stories that kind of all come together, into this bigger story at the end. I love it. I think it's just so much fun. But like, I get why it's difficult to engage with. And also, let's talk a little bit about the time loopy thing. I kind of put this into the script for the summary that we went through of the total what the fuck of the time loop. Like here we have where Buffy is the evil lint on her, right? And so she is experiencing time in this really weird way. But she is like, and I'm like, okay, maybe she's just blacking out during those times, but she's actually continuing to behave as though she's Buffy.
Right.
But she's not, because at one of them, she's at the water fountain and then she gets up so she's at the water fountain with the water fountain just running over her face for 20 minutes while Tara just stands there and notices nothing weird.
Right.
All of it is just weird. And like Buffy must have been there when Tara went into class, but Buffy's gone for the whole class. So Buffy didn't go into class with her. Tara didn't grab Buffy and bring her in with her and notice that she's in a catatonic state or whatever. Like what was the external experience of that? And also one of the things you brought up, they're watching her, but they're watching her from an external, so they're just watching her stand there frozen.
Yeah, like what are they actually seeing? Is she frozen? Is she, and honestly, like I don't, if we were so deep in Buffy's POV, or if this were somehow magical in a more overt way, that's another thing I take issue with. It's Warren's little trick that he plays on her is like, it's done with technology apparently, but it's very magical.
But it's magical because it seems to be clearly messing with the minds and the perception of the people around her so that they don't notice so much what's going on.
Yeah.
But that's all of those people,
But I love, and again, like it's not, it's kind of garbled, right? Because it is a metaphor in that she literally can't keep up with school.
Right.
That's, we see that in class with Willow.
Okay, but that class is ridiculous.
Oh, the class is so ridiculous.
The most ridiculous. No undergrad class works with all these kids raising their hands and having actual salient points to make about having thought critically about this kind of like deep level of sociology. Like,
The least believable part of this episode is that everyone in that class did the reading and can answer that coherently. Like,
and is
no one did the reading. I've been in that class. No one did the reading.
And they're all competing to like answer the questions. Look, I teach classes that involve watching movies movies and talking about movies. My kids are fairly like, involved in those conversations. But still, when it comes to the readings that I assign, no. So I get this exact kind of thing when we're talking about, dodgeball. Sure. But when we're talking about Robert McKee's story, no.
Yep.
No,
Yeah.
they don't, So I find that to be like, and maybe it's just because of my experiences teaching on the college level that I'm like, oh, please. But anyway, that aside,
I like it. Yeah. I like it symbolically. I like the class symbolically. It's ridiculous. I think I would
from
like
Buffy's
it even
POV,
more.
that's how it feels. Right?
Yeah. And I think I would appreciate it more if this, like, the school is all sped up around her.
Yeah.
Was a metaphor for feeling like she can't keep up in college, because it's not a metaphor, but it is. It's literally these dudes messing with her, but then she ends up on a construction site with these, misogynist dudes in hard hats being misogynist dudes in hard hats when she's just come back from seeing Angel, who's not like the other guys. And of course, these are the other guys. And there's this whole, if we wanted to, we could go down this whole road of like, she's back from heaven and men are the worst and they're really the worst. I don't know. Right. It's just, it's fine. But Tara doesn't spot anything. The guys are clearly watching something from the van. I just know.
Yeah, it just feels super weird because the guys are watching from the van. So even if there was some kind of mystical effect that made the people around her, that messed with the minds of the people around her, which, by the way, given everything that is going to happen to Tara and is probably actually currently happening to Tara on the regular, I find it disturbing that Tara's mind is being messed with, after her experience with Glory, after the fact that I think that Willow has ordered Lisa Bramble from Costco at this point and is probably messing with Tara's memory on the regular to keep her from arguing, which I find disturbing on a great level. We'll talk about that when we get there, which won't be too long. But all of this is, it all kind of like melds together in this weird misogynistic soup, and none of it really makes any sense. Like, the guys are watching through technology, so even with everybody's minds being messed with, how would they be able to see it? Because they're watching through technology. The technology is not going to warp the reality to express Buffy's POV in this. But I don't know. But then again, like, all of that stuff, like, when you get into these arguments, like, how would that really happen in a show with demons and vampires? Like, at a certain point, I'm the asshole, right? You know what I'm saying? Like, if I went to AITA and said, look, I'm a person who critiques Buffy and talk about these things are not believable, maybe I'm the asshole. But yeah.
Well, and also but
and also
I think it's a lot easier to let something like that just exist in a story when we are deep in someone's POV and we're not privy to any sort of puppeteering that's going on. But when we also are seeing, like, we're seeing what Buffy is seeing and we're experiencing what she's experiencing, particularly at the Magic Box. But then we're also seeing behind the scenes, and it just doesn't, it's unsatisfying for me because it doesn't line up. It's not, it's not you're repeating this because we're doing some sort of spiritual allegory, we're like talking about the human soul and quest for meaning. It's literally three dudes who are having a contest about who can fuck with you the best. That's where I don't know.
Well, and if your metaphor isn't strong, like if we kind of have places where you can sort of pull out that metaphor, like Buffy not being able to keep up at college, but for the most part, it's not metaphor. It's a situation, like, it's circumstance. It's, situation comedy almost. Like, we have her in this Groundhog Day loop, which, by the way, I love and is my favorite. Like, I love that whole run, the Groundhog Day and the Magic Box.
It's so good.
Take slugs. She's not gonna sleep with you anyway. Like, all of it I love. The whole run I love. But at the same time, like, the metaphor isn't strong, so we go to the sci-fi of it, right? Because it does have an element of sci-fi. We're kind of bringing that in because they're using all of this, advanced technology mixed with magic, right, to create this whole torment thing, right? So yeah, I don't know. I mean, it was, I love, the three. I love opening everything with, this is going to be great. This is going to be great. This is going to be great. Like Buffy's unending optimism of trying to make all of this stuff work, So, I mean, I like all of this stuff. I think it's really fun. But yeah, when it comes right down to it, we come back to these three guys and they are where the cookie starts to crumble, right?
Yeah. It's a weird, male writer, director, self-owned, too.
Yeah, right.
I was thinking about this. I'm like, okay. I mean, obviously I hate this because I hate seeing men mess with women. I hate these dudes because, I mean, they're hateable.
Yes.
We'll talk more about them and why specifically. But I'm watching this and I'm like, okay, but what is going on here that this is I'm so... I stood up in my house. I'm like, just no. Why do I hate this so much? Right. And I think there's something here about I don't know, the male auteur director kind of positioning of these guys.
Yeah.
This is going to be way, way into the weeds and way, I don't know. That's it's going to be a little cultural studies. But
I love when you get in the weeds. Go in the weeds.
I don't know. So I'm thinking about them. I'm thinking about them and what they're doing and how they're positioned in the narrative. And of course, throughout they're making all of these references. They're making all these pop cultural references, which is a thing that they have done. It's a thing they will continue to do. But I think in this episode, everything they reference is movies and television.
Yeah.
Star Wars, Star Trek, The X-Files, Monty Python, James Bond. I mean... I can't come up with a non-TV or movie reference that the guys
I don't think
made.
These guys are reading, the Odyssey. These are not great readers.
But previously we've seen other, nerd culture, quote unquote, references with video games and action figures and things like that. So they have other nerd or geek culture touch points. But in this episode, it's all movies and television, as far as I can tell. And this, I mean, and the fact that the mess with Buffy dick measuring contest is almost derailed by an argument about who the best James Bond is.
Yeah.
Felt, I don't know, maybe meaningful to me. I mean, which Warren tries to one up by mentioning specific shots in Moonraker. He takes issue
to a double take.
Yup. He's taking issue not only with the ridiculousness of the scenario, but also with the ridiculousness of the filmmaking.
Right.
And their entire operation is based on crafting these scenes for Buffy and then watching her play them out on literal television monitors.
From a control room. Yeah, it is very much a control room.
It feels very much male writer-director. They are positioning themselves as the auteurs of the Buffy serial. I mean, to use the word from the title of the episode. And I mean, and if I wanted to get real visual studies PhD about this,
I love it.
I could talk about the decision to make the other thing that they watch on those TV monitors, quote unquote, free cable porn.
Oh my God.
So on one hand, we have exploitation of Buffy's Slayer powers for the advancement of men.
Yes.
And on the other hand, we have explicitly stolen images of, I'm presuming, women performing sexually for the cishet male gaze. I mean, it's this close to being a really savvy critique of men's entitlement to women's bodies and experiences through film and television. It's this close.
Oh,
it's so close to being about not just the experience of being a voyeur, but the experience of being a writer, a director, someone who is crafting a narrative for a woman, but really for the advancement of men. This is for their own enjoyment, and it's also for their own contest,
it's for their own competition,
and camaraderie.
it's for their own entertainment. Yeah.
So
no, I love that. Yeah.
And I don't know like how much of a deep dive that is worth doing, but
No, well, I love it. I mean, it gets into this realm. Yeah.
It's there.
It is. Well, first of all, death of the author, if you see it, it's there. Second of all, there is this accidental theme work that can happen within a culture in that the culture itself, the free cable porn is a nerd joke. So you bring that into this scenario because it lends itself to that. But it also shines a light. Like our culture reflects us back at ourselves. And so sometimes we will end up, I don't think this was deliberate theme work, but I think it still manages to shed that light and make those connections, maybe without necessarily intending to, just because the tendrils of that are so deeply ingrained within our culture, so yeah, I find that really, really interesting. But there's this whole like nerd culture thing, right? Mm-hmm. that I find endlessly fascinating, because we have this thing where we just hate nerds, right? Like this is something that has been built into our culture from, I don't know where, I have not studied the etymology of nerd. I don't know when this started, but I would probably put it culturally somewhere in the 1950s, right?
I was going to say mid-century, post. I would, if I had to
guess. Post-World War II. Post-World War II, World War II, the greatest generation where men were men, women were women. And then we needed women to go to work. We needed women to, to make the rivets, Rosie the Riveter, all of that kind of stuff. And then when the men came back, we were like, okay, honey, go back into the kitchen. And we started to feel like the beginning of the women's liberation movement, which of course, dates back to suffrage, in the late 19th, early 20th century. But, this is all part of a long line of movements. But I think that this was this one thing. And so we have like this internal male schism, right, between the jocks and the nerds, where we're separating men out into these divisions. And it is typically a male thing because nobody cares about the female experience and nobody talks about it. But we've been after nerds culturally for a really long time. And nerds have been, kind of traditionally in our culture, like we pick on and beat up the nerds and use them as sources of derision and comedy, throughout our cultural properties throughout this time, right? And I would say that started in the 50s. But then in the 80s, we had this big revenge of the nerds-assance, right? In which the nerds fought for the rights to live in peace and rape women just as capably as the jocks, usually by tricking the beautiful women who scorn them into believing that they are the jocks just long enough so that they can rape them and then get rewarded with love and admiration from their victim because they were just so good at the raping, right? And if you guys out there are not familiar with these references, you can look up Rape and 16 Candles, also Rape and Revenge of the Nerds, but be prepared. It is fucking disturbing and infuriating. And these are definitely very clear examples of rape culture. Whenever I talk to somebody who denies rape culture, I bring out these examples, and then I have yet to fail to make them recognize and acknowledge that yes, rape culture fucking exists, and that's exactly what it is. This idea that a nerd can pretend to be a jock, have sex with a woman without her consent, and then end up being loved by that beautiful woman despite the fact that he's a nerd who just raped her because he was just so good in the sack. So this is clearly self-insertion fantasy because who was writing the movies in the 80s? Probably self-identified nerds, right? But anyway, what started in the 80s eventually moved into this manifestation in the trio in Buffy, and would later go on to become the hive of scum and toxic masculinity that self-identify as quote-unquote incels. We're not going to go there. But Warren, Andrew, and Jonathan are what happens when people with, and please hear the disapproving quote marks in my tone, quote unquote default identities, are both riddled with entitlement and then denied the societal power that they, by their own estimation, are quote unquote owed. All right. So this cognitive dissonance creates rage, and they use the privilege that they have to basically throw a massive temper tantrum that ends in threats of rape and murder at best, and actual rape and murder at worst. So whatever disgust you feel at these three, and anyone who feels disgust when dealing with these guys is entitled to that disgust. They are real, they're present, they're active forces in our society, and having them in this story, having that discussion happen in this story, I actually find very, very interesting. Warren, Jonathan, and Andrew are real, they're gross, but seeing them get their collective asses kicked by Buffy, I'm not going to lie, a little satisfying. Kind of enjoy that, right?
Yeah.
But that said, I would like to just take a quick moment to separate actual nerd culture from these assholes, right? Nerds basically are people who are passionate about something. I mean, it's not always comic books or superheroes. There are knitting nerds and marine biology nerds and space nerds. And the only reason why we have anything awesome in the world is because of nerds. And some people, you know, are even story nerds, right? So that happens on occasion.
Some people, it's happened.
Some people.
I don't know.
Some people are also story nerds. Basically, caring deeply about anything is a form of vulnerability. And when I teach about writing vulnerability to my students, I talk to them about anybody who cares deeply about something is going to be vulnerable when it comes to that thing. It matters so much to them. So love is one of the sources of vulnerability, along with fear, identity, and shame. Loving a thing, loving a topic, loving an idea, that is also a form of love that can create vulnerability. And the need to stomp out vulnerability is, I think, a primary source of toxic masculinity, which is why bullies who are too weak to wrestle with their own insecurities pick on people who love things and ideas with their whole hearts, you know, nerds, right? So while Andrew, Jonathan, and Warren are nerds, I reject the premise that is their nerdiness that makes them toxic. It's their nerdiness that actually makes them lovable, to the extent that they are lovable. Like Andrew painting the Death Star and tricking out the horn on the van is actually lovable, which brings us to our next discussion, Noelle.
Yes.
Why do we love Jonathan and Andrew?
I mean, a lot of
because
reasons.
you and I've had this discussion. We kind of do, right?
Like,
despite all evidence, you know?
Yeah, I really do. And I mean, was it just last episode where I was like, oh shit, no, Jonathan is actually terrible. And I managed to forget because there is something about him. And I think, I mean, vulnerability is absolutely a huge part of it. And I think, I mean, vulnerability is why nerds get picked on. Right? Because they are, I mean, stereotypically, they are physically vulnerable in that they are not jocks, i.e. they're not, you know, big and strong, but they also have this vulnerability and that they are passionate about something, which makes them less masculine to society.
They have that vulnerability,
and it's, so I mean, the reason, like, you have this heading in our notes, it's why do we hate nerds? And I was like, oh, we hate nerds because of misogyny, because nerds, like, we do because under patriarchy, masculinity, specifically like white, cishet, able-bodied masculinity, is the masculinity. So anything that is not that is less than, aka feminine. Like, what does it mean to be less masculine? It means to be feminine. I mean, in this like bichromatic non-rainbow of thought about how gender works, right? So, you know, so like we hate nerds because nerds are feminine in a way that hegemonic masculinity, you know, would have us believe
cannot handle
a bad thing. Like
it has this inherently vulnerable sense to it, right?
Yeah. So, I mean, there's that. So we love, I mean, the simple answer, at least for me, why do I love Jonathan and Andrew? I love them because they're vulnerable. But how they're vulnerable is, I think, interesting and problematic, right? Because we have these three guys who are presented as a unit, like they are the trio. But it's really Warren who is in charge, in that it's his idea to take over Sunnydale. And then he is presented as the most, culturally sanctioned in terms of his masculinity. Like he is the most, God, I'm using like the biggest quotes here, but like he's
We've
the
got
most...
air quotes all over this discussion.
Oh my God,
yes.
it's ridiculous. Yeah, and of course, I always want to put the little disclaimer on everything that like I'm speaking in binary terms and like, and
because
it
our
sounds
culture
very
sees things in binary, despite the fact that that's not the reality of experience. Yeah.
And shit starts to sound really bioessentialist, and I never mean it to be that either. It's like, I mean, this is the thing about any sort of cultural critique. You're like, well, the culture says this. So that's what we're talking about. But in terms of tropes of masculinity and like what is the most masculine of the three of them, Warren is the most masculine. And then there are these two other guys who are still part of this group, who are still participating in all of the villainous behavior, but because they're more vulnerable, they take on this kind of underdog status. And as a viewer, I almost root for them sort of against Warren. I mean, and part of that is I just hate him so much, and I cannot wait for his skin to be forcibly removed from his body by magic. I'm so excited.
Hello,
it's
Flay
cathartic.
Day. We are waiting for Flay Day.
Oh my God. Well, it's so cathartic. This is why we come to fiction. All right?
It is. Yeah.
But I mean, so part of the reason that I love them is that compared to Warren, they're like, air quotes, not that bad, which is so fucked up because of course that's how toxicity works.
Well,
that's how
because they're Warren may be the spark, right? But they're the oxygen that feeds it, right? They make it possible for him to do all of this because they throw their skills and their abilities behind his mission. So even though they're not as bad as Warren, they are, because they're not stopping him from doing things that are absolutely, morally wrong, that are just wrong, and bad things, because they have that essential weakness of character. And I think it's what happens when vulnerability and entitlement clash, right? Sure. We have that moment of cognitive dissonance that creates this internal rage that is, I want this thing and I don't have this thing, so I should have this thing because I'm entitled to this thing. So how do I throw a fucking fit and use all of my power in that process? There is so much power that comes with being, a cishet white male, right? There's so much power involved in that, and they use that to get what they want, whatever they want, without thinking about any of this on a deeper level, which, granted, societally, we haven't really encouraged anybody to think about that on a deeper level. But yeah, it's, I don't know, but I love them. I love Jonathan and Andrew. I've always loved Jonathan and Andrew. The first time that I realized that Jonathan raped the two girls in Superstar, I was shocked and horrified because A, oh my God, that's Jonathan. And B, how did I never notice that before? How did that get beyond my notice? Then we forget about it immediately because he's not really held responsible for it, right?
Well, and also because we don't, even as we're critiquing these things, like the pump is still primed to not take these guys seriously. Like that's kind of the oddly revolutionary at the time thing that Buffy does with the trio is we're used to the nerd characters who are predatory. We're used to rooting for them. We're used to them being the heroes. We're like, way to go. Like we super want Crispin Glover to end up with Leah Thompson and go to the Enchantment Under the Sea
Biff
dance.
in the face, right?
Yeah. I mean, yeah. So we're used to rooting for the nerds. So Buffy subverts that by taking the same type of nerd that we've seen be the heroes of film and television and make them the villains, but they're still doing all of the same actions
They're still adorable in a lot of the ways that, yeah, which is actually why, I mean, this is one of the things that I really love about this, big bad for the season. I like these guys. I like what we're doing with them. I like what we're saying about them. I like that we're actually taking a look at all of this bullshit in the culture and calling it out as this is not okay. There's a lot of stuff happening here that I think is really, really interesting and absolutely revolutionary for the time period that it was in, So I hate it because it makes me very, very angry because it is so true to like actual life experience, with a lot of these kinds of guys. We're not working in metaphor. This is literal. This is literal and this is real. And that makes it so much more like infuriating, especially because it hits all those trigger points about all the times, in my personal experience, when I've been up against these guys who have talked this way and who behaved this way and how that's not okay. But yet I was taught growing up, as a girl in the 80s that that was okay. Not only okay, but that's the adorable, isn't it so cute, right?
These are the nice guys.
These are the nice guys. These are the guys that we want to root for, when in actuality, what they're doing is, just as reprehensible as the classic, jock, toxically masculine kind of thing that we tend to see. So I actually, enjoy it. I kind of like the fact that I'm challenged by the idea that I still love Jonathan and Andrew. And as we move into season 7, loving Andrew is a thing that is going to be, again, a challenge for me because I do. I love Andrew.
Him.
I love Tom Lenk. I love that performance. I love the way he's written. And Storyteller is one of my absolute favorite episodes of Buffy. It's in my top 10.
Yeah.
Which, of course, is another Jane Espenson
easily
penned episode. But yeah, so it's very complicated. And I think that complication is absolutely appropriate to this because people are complicated and people are not 100% good or 100% evil. There is a mixture. And having love and affection for Jonathan and Andrew, who you can see as victims of a society they're just not smart enough to outthink, that they are raised to be this, And
there's something kind of darling in the way that they are so devoted to the task of fighting for a kind of dominant culture of masculinity, which we know they will never achieve.
Yeah.
It's super problematic. And I'm like fully canceling myself right now for like even saying it. But like watching them try so hard to be something that they will never really be. And that ultimately we don't want for them anyway, because like, no, thank you. Like, we don't need more. Right. We don't need more of that, but
because they're not good men. They're not good people, but they're also like, I don't think that they are self-aware enough to understand that their choices are actively evil. I think that if they had some kind of awareness of the extent to which they are evil, which we see Jonathan picking up. Jonathan is the first one to sort of start realizing that they're not the good guys, that they are absolutely the evil bad guys. They were playing at being the bad guys. They're like, oh, we're going to, form this syndicate and take over Sunnydale. But that was play to Jonathan. Jonathan saw this as play and fun, I think, until we get to the point in Dead Things where Katrina gets killed. And then he starts to really see what's going on. By the time we get to seeing Red and the events after that, we see Jonathan really feeling the extent of what he has done and understanding it in a way that that Andrew and Warren failed to, which is interesting because Jonathan actually is the first of them to recognize what they've done and to try to make amends and to try to have, gain some manner of redemption. And of course he gets killed for it, right? Because Andrew's easier to manipulate. So that's something that we're going to see in season 7 as we move into, a different phase of this story where we get to the redemption phase for these guys who maybe aren't evil, but very much create an environment in which evil can thrive, and contribute to that environment actively. So I don't know, like, I find them really interesting. I still have love for Andrew and Jonathan, none for Warren. Warren has disgusted me from the moment he showed up in I Was Made to Love You, and has always bugged me, ever since. I think that Adam Bush does a good job playing Warren. I think the actor does a good job with the character. But yeah, the character makes my skin crawl every time we come in contact with him. Whereas Jonathan and Andrew, I laugh at the jokes with them. I kind of love them. Andrew painting the Death Star, and then Jonathan making an argument about the design of the Death Star, and then, programming the horn with the Star Wars theme. All of this stuff I find adorable and lovable, while at the same time, really wanting to hold Jonathan and Andrew accountable for what they are actively doing, which is a terrible, terrible thing. It's complicated.
It's so complicated, and it's so, oh God, it's so sad. I mean, Jonathan, I think more so than the other two, is motivated by this kind of loneliness that we've seen. Right. We've seen previously. Like, what he does is despicable, but like what is underneath it all, I mean, for me, I get the sense is very much like he is a lonely person who doesn't really know how to engage with other people and have the kind of contact that he wishes he could have. And it's like, go to therapy. Like, you guys, like, I just want
some help. Yeah.
Oh my God. Like, how many plot lines are just like, these men should go to therapy.
Yeah. Well, that they should. Yeah. But this is fiction. This is where we work out all of our bullshit, right? All of our cultural bullshit. Fiction is, to a certain extent, a level of cultural therapy, where we get to take a look at ourselves. And it ain't pretty.
But guys, you can do both. Okay.
Yeah,
like you can like listen to conversational podcasts and watch TV and movies and go to therapy. Like, you can do all of these things.
Therapy. Everybody needs therapy. Everybody needs therapy. I fully endorse that. And unfortunately, our mental health system, such as it is, does not support that. But everybody needs a good therapist. So one of the things that I find, of course, a little ironic about this whole discussion is that here we are almost at an hour. We've spent most of it discussing the men. We haven't really talked about Buffy, our female hero, that much.
Our podcast fails the Bechdel test. Congratulations to us.
Congratulations to us, right? So here we have Buffy, right? Struggling, trying to figure out exactly what it is that she's supposed to do. She comes home with fried chicken, right? And immediately Giles is like, what are you going to do? And she's like, well, I'm going to pay this bill and I'm going to do this. And he's like, no, with your life. And I'm like, okay, look, she just got her life back. For all intents and purposes, she's 3 months old. Like, give her a minute, Well,
and like, also, like, the bills, like, right now, I hate that moment so much. I hate it so much because the question that he's asking, like, logically, yes, like, we need to address the stuff with the house and the bills. And of course, that's going to be the first thing she's thinking of. And then he's like, no, I meant like a big picture, like your whole life.
Also, let's figure out your whole life as if you're not under enough stress right now.
Like, is the basement still underwater? We don't know. Like, we don't know.
I mean, I assume that there was a full coppery pipe in there somewhere. Yeah.
Oh my
I don't know.
God.
I don't know. The whole thing is so crazy. And what I do not understand, like this whole thing with Giles, we get to this thing at the end, right? Where she says, he gives her a check and we're supposed to see this as a generous gift when she got him 2 years of retroactive pay, not to mention the fact that he clearly has money set aside because he was able to be unemployed for such a long goddamn time, and then bought a business in town, which is also generating income for him so that he can just fuck off to England and hang out and do whatever the hell he was doing over there, right? Well, that's supporting him. Why like he can't give her money, why he can't move in and start paying the fucking mortgage. Why can't he live there and just be dad? He's been dad anyway. Why can't this just be, you know, Slayer HQ and everybody live there and everybody contribute and everybody, like, the money that Willow and Tara would be spending on dorms and room and board at the university, they can put toward this house. Like, there are ways to resolve these money issues without everything landing on Buffy, who is fresh out of the fucking grave, right? You know? So all of this I find super, super irritating. The way that when he gives her this money, it is treated as though it is this generous gift rather than, like, you know, fiduciary justice. That we should be taking care of Buffy.
Phrase.
Everybody should be. I love it. Everybody should be contributing to Buffy's well-being right now. Buffy's upkeep, the upkeep of the house, the space for Dawn. This is a family. They should be pulling together. And the idea that it all falls on Buffy's shoulders and that a job, which we're going to see her get, a job at the fucking Double Meat Palace, is going to stem the tide of this like financial crash, right?
Yeah.
A minimum wage job at a fast food place is not going to uphold that lifestyle. Like, you know, so all of it I find to be just too much.
Well, it's the problem we were having talking about, like, I don't want a literal pile of bills on my fantasy vampire show.
Exactly.
This is an extension of that, but it's also like we do this a lot on Buffy, I think, where it's like we kind of want to have it both ways. We want to have, like, here's the practical day-to-day, but we're not going to fully explore that because, like, the logistics of, you know, whatever it is, 7 people, like, figuring out, okay, here's how we're going to live in this house, and here's how we're going to handle these bills, and here's how we're going to, like, that shit is so boring. It's so boring trying to figure out the day-to-day
lives.
We don't want to do that.
I don't want to go to my show and have that. Yeah.
Like, that's not why we come to our, you know, demon fighting vampire sticking show. That's not why we're here. But because we've gone down this path of Buffy as, you know, capital A adult and what that means, that's going to come up. So we're kind of in this in-between space with the narrative and with the focus of the storytelling and but yeah, come on. Like a Giles ex machina. No, I don't.
Yeah.
No, I don't. Care
I
for
mean,
it.
Giles saying, "Hey, this is money you've earned. This is money you're owed, and every week you're gonna receive a check from me because you fucking earned it because you are out there saving the world every night." I mean, for God's sake, I know this is pre-GoFundMe, but between the bunch of them, they could figure something out, you know? So I do understand that we are trying to get Buffy to wrestle with the realities of adulthood, and that this show up until now has been about that transition to adulthood, you know, and finally accepting adulthood. Now here we are, and you have to deal with the realities of adulthood, which adulting sucks. It's no fun, you know? And I get it. And I think it's fine. I think it's the specific ways in which they present the adulthood that bother me. The specifics of this is a gift rather than money earned and money owed, you know, all of that is really super irritating to me. But then we have this whole thing with Buffy trying to, you know, figure it out. She goes to college and she can't keep up with the class, the ridiculously unrealistic, class that Willow's in. She's being tormented by these guys. She goes to the construction site and there's a bunch of demons that show up and she has to deal with that. That she is capably handling all of these challenges that are being thrown at her and nobody can see them. Everything disappears. From external perspectives, it just looks like Buffy's crazy. So it's additional level of gaslighting on Buffy that drives me crazy. And gaslighting is, let me just tell you, the predominant patriarchal, a tool of choice, right? Gaslighting is its favorite thing to do, favorite pastime. So all of that combined, I like watching it. It's fun, but at the same time, for anybody who watches that and is like, all right, enough, like this is really super irritating. Like, I get it. But we have this moment, though, where she finally goes to Spike, right? When she stops trying to figure out who she is, she goes to Spike and sits down with him and starts doing shots. And I love this whole run from the first, through to the end of "You were supposed to fix my life." That run, I fucking love. There's this moment in there when Spike says, "You're not a schoolgirl. You're not a shop girl. You're a creature of the darkness like me," right? And so here we have the one place where she feels like she can, she says, the only person I can talk to is a neutered vampire who cheats at kitten poker, right? So we end up getting that. But Spike here is grooming Buffy, like, bending this narrative to try to convince her that she belongs with him, right? And that is her identity, altering the narrative of her experience to match what it is that he wants. And Buffy doesn't, for a moment, she's like, "Fuck you, please," right? She does not buy into it, which I really, really like. But it's pretty gross to watch. And I mean, I like Spike, but this moment where he's like abusively bending that narrative to convince her of where she belongs and what her identity is, and that it's with him.
It
feels also, yeah.
It's gross, and it also comes on the heels of everyone else sort of bringing Buffy into their own thing. So it's Tara and Willow at school, it's Xander doing construction, it's Anya at the store. It's like, I think that didn't raise as big and bright of a red flag for me, because this is Spike's turn to do the come do my thing with me. But of course it's different because Spike has feelings for Buffy.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Like, you're absolutely right. It's creepy, and he's definitely, he's doing a very creepy dude thing of, like,
narrative. Yeah.
Telling her who she is and where she belongs. But it's also within the context of this episode of everyone trying to get Buffy on board.
Spending a little time in everybody's world. I think that because of that because it is so, like, it is that grooming, that these personalities do to their victims, that I find heartily, horrible, because, that shit happened to me. So maybe, like, I'm bringing myself into it a little bit too much. But yeah, that just bugged me, but I love absolutely everything else about her time with Spike. But one of the things that I love the most, though, is that we have actually the opposite of an identity struggle here with Buffy. Like, Buffy knows exactly who and what she is. And the only reason why she's trying on all of these things is so that she can actually pay for that full fucking copper repipe, right? This is all about just making money. It's not about she has a question about who she is. She knows who she is. What she's actually struggling with and dealing with is her response to trauma, and actually ends the season. We end this season, frustratingly enough, by presenting her with an additional huge trauma that we're essentially going to just erase. But, whatever, we'll talk about that when we get there. But the trauma itself is not induced by her death. That was fine. It's by being pulled back out of that and into this world that is all evil and chaos, So I actually kind of love that. And I love the way that we are presenting her trauma, because that is a traumatic experience. The experience of trauma puts you out of sync with the world. It numbs your emotions. You can't feel, and you don't feel like yourself, and you're not connected to yourself, and you don't really know who you are. I like, though, that she knows who she is, that she's not nobody's convincing her that this is where she belongs. She's going into all of these things that this is going to be great. Like, she's being positive about it. The only one that she goes to where she's not trying to make a buck and figure out how she's going to pay for the full copper repipe, though, is with Spike. When she goes to hang out with Spike, it's because he is the only one that she feels okay around, which I find really interesting. And I think it's literally because she does not care how he feels or what he thinks. I think it's the only time she can be around. She can be alone with him.
Yeah, she can be vulnerable with him. And then she can be vulnerable with him because she she doesn't care what he thinks. She's not trying to impress him. Yeah. And then she goes and makes herself even more vulnerable by drinking with him, which I find so fascinating. I love that. I love that gesture of a kind of resignation to, all right, this is my person that I'm vulnerable with. Here we go.
I guess this is what we do now, is kind of the way that this is presented. Like, okay, I guess this is where I am now, so let's just ride with it, right? Yeah.
Which is her her whole drinking persona is that.
Oh my God. By the way, I think you're drunk.
I think you're Oh
my God.
The performance, the drunk performance by Sarah Michelle Gellar.
I love it.
Holy shit.
I'm not getting in a bar fight. Sure, I'll beat him up for information, but I'm not doing this to defend your right to play kitten poker. Oh my God. I mean, and I hate the kitten poker thing. I hate the kittens as currency thing because it's a little too jokey for me.
I love it. Oh my God. Kitten poker. Kitten poker makes this episode for me.
Oh my God.
It's so fucking funny. It's so, you know what? Because it's just so bananas. But like, of course these demons would play for kittens. Of course they would. Are you kidding me? I don't know.
Not live kittens. Okay, if they're going to eat kittens, I think they would already have them as kitten meat. I mean, we eat, like steaks, but nobody brings a cow as currency,
Oh, but lobsters are alive in the tank, and then you get to choose your live lobster to have steamed.
That's pretty terrible, but that's also, I guess maybe if kittens also are best eaten fresh, then I guess, okay, fine. But whatever. Yeah, no, picking the lobster is something I've never been able to do.
But they're adorable.
Because I'm a hypocrite and they're not furry. Yeah, but
it's delightful visual juxtaposition for me. I just like it.
It's a little too silly for me. It crosses the line of silliness for me in a show that is greatly silly. So again, this is just like me criticizing the realistic, elements of a show with demons and vampires. So anyway, but one of the other things though that when I was thinking about this that kind of caught my attention was this Buffy effect, right? What I find interesting is that the last two remaining big bads of the series, right, the trio this season and the first next season, only become threats because Buffy came back. Everything would have been fun. Had Warren not been threatened by Buffy's power and strength, the trio would have just robbed a bank or two and spent all their money in a fruitless pursuit of the chicks part of the plan. Tara would have lived. Willow wouldn't have threatened to destroy the world, right? We wouldn't have had that. And it's textual in season 7 that all the firsty shenanigans happened because Buffy was brought back to life after dying, which also happened in season 1. But according to the text, it was the post-season 5 mystical return that did this. And I guess there's an equivalent of the 5-second rule for bringing a Slayer back from the dead. I don't know. Or it's because Willow shifted the mystical balance by bringing Buffy back months after the fact, whereas Xander saved her more immediately in a mundane method, right? But at any rate, like all of the various apocalypses, whatever the plural is, apocalypses, all of them happen because Buffy was brought back, because Willow did this thing, which I find really, really interesting.
Yeah, and also an interesting commentary on, like, we cannot, like, the world cannot tolerate an extraordinary woman.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's the whole, I mean, that's the whole setup for this episode with the trio fucking with her because she's so powerful.
Mm-hmm.
They feel, like, justified somehow in messing with her and, like, trying to destabilize her and find her weakness.
Yep.
But yeah, we just can't tolerate that much kick-ass feminine energy. It's just like don't be too extraordinary, ladies. Bad shit will happen. Like,
well, yeah, Willow does this amazing thing, and then everything that comes from it is shit, right? I mean, granted, rank arrogant amateur probably shouldn't have done it. Fair enough, right? But I mean, Willow is incredible in what I was amazing, right? In what she was able to do. And then don't be amazing, women. Because if you do, it's going to fuck everything up. So, I think there's a message there, maybe. I think there's something to be pulled from that. Like nature abhors a vacuum, culture abhors an extraordinary woman, right? Is it something like that?
Something like that. Yeah. I mean, God, well, and how many stories are just, there is an extraordinary woman and forces are out there to destroy her because
And let's punish her for that.
we
because
can't have
God
that.
Forbid. Yep. A woman with power, fuck that shit. All right.
Can't
Anyway.
have that. Oh, God.
Oh, God. All right. So, Noelle, what's your favorite part?
Okay. All right. My favorite part is Alison Dinian as the mummy hand. We didn't talk about the mummy hand.
We did not.
Time loop at all. And we're gonna now because
Okay.
it's great. It's
I
great.
love it. It's my favorite part. Yeah. Well, okay, it's my second favorite part.
I do feel like I need to say the problematic thing that is, wait a second. So ancient mummy hand that we just have in our magic shop basement because reasons, because, you know, that's not, that doesn't belong in a tomb somewhere to an actual person. I mean, we know from Inca Mummy Girl that
to an actual person, to an actual culture. Yes, exactly.
Yeah. We know that mummies, like not only are they, you know, obviously actual people from actual cultures with actual, you know, significance to their lives,
and yes,
but they have feelings like this. Right. But that is exactly what I love about the mummy hand. I love, okay, first of all, I love puppeteering. I love it. It is incredible. It is an incredible art form. Somebody who can express a full range of emotion with their hand. Are you kidding me? It's so fucking impressive. But that mummy hand has personality. It has, I mean, it has vulnerability. It has, like, I love it. I love it when Buffy is going after.
I love when it's snapping with the tongs.
Yes, I love when she goes after it with the tongs, and then later we see it with the tongs. It has somehow gotten the tongs
to
from
get the tongs away from the Slayer. Yes.
It is a hand that has outsmarted the Slayer. And I love that Jonathan, you know, he says he gives her a task to solve that resists solving.
Yes.
The resistance is the hand itself. It's so fucking funny and so brilliant. And the performance of the hand is just delightful. Yeah. It's expressive. It has a little mummy hand personality. And I love it. And I love it. I love that this is also an actual person playing this hand. Like now this would be CGI, like 100% CGI. This is a practical effect that is
I love it.
So good and so funny. And a performer in her own right. And I'm here for it. I love it. Fucking love the mummy hand. I love the performance. Alison Dinian did a thing and it's amazing.
That is the best. I think that may be one of my favorite parts that we've ever had.
Ooh, meta. A favorite part. Love
favorite part.
All right, Lani, what's your favorite part?
Okay, well, it's Spike and Buffy. The whole thing from this is going to be great and blah to, you know, you were supposed to fix my life.
Loud.
Oh my God. Your motorcycle's loud. It's all so great and I love it, and I love the way it builds the relationship, even with Spike like grossly grooming Buffy. But you know what? He is a demon. Like, he is evil, and like we know that. So all right, fine. But Buffy completely resists it. She is not vulnerable to his manipulations, which I really fucking love. And all of it, that whole run is absolutely adorable. I think especially the way that he looks at her when she's drinking, and she's so fucking adorable. And he just has this look on his face like he is completely enchanted by her, and I love it.
She's ridiculous and he loves it, and like, what more could you ask for? Oh, and she calls him on his cheating, which I enjoy. And then he says,
"Oh, you saw that, did you?" Exactly. Which I love, is that she can see that he's cheating and he gets caught by her. You know, it's very nice. I like it.
If you enjoyed this conversation and would like to join in, connect with the show on Twitter, follow @Chipperish, and use the hashtag StillPretty.
This episode of Still Pretty was brought to you by the Chipperish media producers who support us on Patreon at the power producer level. These people are the reason why Still Pretty is coming to you free and ad-free right now, so thank you to our October producers. Shelley, Kristen, Jonathan, Rose, Erica, Alice, Abigail, and Sarah. And this week's special message for our power producers, maybe it was Evil Lint.
To find out how you too can support Chipperish Media, visit patreon.com/Chipperish. Other ways to show your support: write a great review on Apple Podcasts, tell your friends about the show, or call on the misty portal to your demon dimension where you will lay your head and gently die.
I love that line so much. We will be back next time with All the Way, the 6th episode of Season 6. Until then, this is gonna be great.
Ugh.